Well, Mark, thank you very much, and I want to thank all of you for taking time from your busy schedules to come to Washington, D.C. and give us the opportunity to visit with you. I know we have a large group from the 1st District of Kentucky, and I look forward to when this breakfast is over, if you all have time, if we could join together up here. I'd like an opportunity to visit with you personally, and I'm also excited about so many young people being here today, and at least the ones at my table, they were telling me how disappointed they are that they've missed school now for almost 3 days. So we want to rush them back so they can get right back to school. And you know, Hal Rogers was talking about he and Mark Haney were neighbors, and they're both from Pulaski County, and there must be something about Pulaski County have this abundant, white, marvelous-looking hair. But so I don't know, maybe it's the water, whatever.
Same bar.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Hal had mentioned this coal issue, and of course, we all want to tell you how much we appreciate what you do at providing food and fiber and so many tremendous products that goes all over the world. We have the most productive farmers in the world. And we know it's expensive in farming today, and so you always have to be very much aware of cost. And whether you're in farming or whether you're in a manufacturing business, whatever it might be, whatever your business is, electricity cost does have an impact on you. And in fact, there's a company in my district that you're not going to believe this, but their electric bill is over $300 million a year. And I won't get into the details of what it is, but that's a lot of money. And I mention this because the Wall Street Journal and NBC last month did a poll in America on what issues were most important to the American people. And of course, number one was concern about jobs. As you know, we still have a sluggish economy. And the very last, the last item, there were 15 items that the American people decided. The last item of importance was climate change. And yet, President Obama and Gina McCarthy at EPA and John Kerry and others in this administration have taken what I view as an alarmist approach to climate change. And there are consequences because of their approach to it. And every so many years, the United Nations International Panel on Climate Change produces a voluminous report about what's happening, how the earth is warming and sea levels are rising and so forth. And I want to read just briefly this morning one of the lead writers of one of these reports. They have it divided into segments, and his name is Dr. Stephen Schneider, and this is what he wrote about their responsibilities. On one hand, as scientists, we are ethically bound to the scientific method, in effect promising to tell the truth, which means we must include all the doubts, all the dissenters, all the ifs, all the ands, and all the buts. On the other hand, we are humans. We want to see the world a better place, which translates into our reducing the potentially disastrous climate change. To do that, we need media coverage. So we must offer up scary scenarios, make simple, dramatic statements, and make little mention of any doubt. Now, it would be fair criticism to say, well, that's one isolated incident. But I've sat through so many hearings on this, and I've read so many articles about it. This is not an isolated incident of the scientists involved in this process. And the International Panel on Climate Change came out with their most recent report in the fall, just a few months ago. And I want to read just briefly. This is from a scientist named Dr. Judith Curry, who's chair of the School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Georgia Tech. And when that report came out in the international news media, everything was in a scary type scenario. But in her report, Dr. Curry points out, and this is agreed to by many other scientists, that the report acknowledged a lack of warming since 1998 and growing discrepancies between actual observations in reality and the climate model projections of the EPA, of the International Panel on Climate Change. In other words, the projections were much worse than the actual reality. Second of all, acknowledge the evidence of decreased climate sensitivity to increases in atmospheric CO2 concentrations, acknowledged evidence that sea level rising during the 1920s to 1950s was the very same as in the 1993 to 2012 period. And fourth, acknowledge that the Antarctic ice mass is actually increasing. Now, John Kerry last week or two gave a speech in Indonesia. Now, this is the Secretary of State, and this is what he said, among other things. Climate change can now be considered another weapon of mass destruction, perhaps the world's most fearsome weapon of mass destruction. Now, my point this morning is that that kind of alarmist approach to this problem is a disservice not only to the American people, but people worldwide. How many of you know that this administration has put pressure through the Department of Treasury on the World Bank, the Asian Development Fund, and other international financial bodies so that they will not finance the building of a coal plant anywhere in the world? Even though in many countries, Africa, over half the population does not have access to any electricity. They're burning fuel oil on generators and other things that has more CO2 emissions. Now, I acknowledge, and Hal talked about this, no one's going to build a new coal plant in America right now because the natural gas prices are so low because we've got this abundance. But this administration, even if gas prices go up, they've adopted regulations that would be effective in June of this year that would not allow a coal-powered plant to be built in America because there's no technology available to meet the emission standards that they set. Now, even in Europe, which most people acknowledge is the green capital or the greenest area of the world, they've actually, over the last 20 months, mothballed 30 gigawatts of new gas-powered plants because, and you know they have a 12% unemployment rate in Europe, but the reason they did was because natural gas coming from Russia is so expensive that it's proven to be a tremendous drag on their economy. And that's why they today have one of the highest, not the only reason, but the highest unemployment rate in the world. So what are they doing in Europe today? Not in France, of course, but they have nuclear. But in Europe, a lot of people are surprised that in Europe they imported 50% of our coal exports last year. All of the coal exports in America, 50% went to Europe because with gas prices so high, they're building some new coal-powered plants and they're reusing some of these coal-powered plants to meet their electricity needs. And the sad thing is that in America, if our gas prices go up, despite President Obama saying we want an all of the above energy policy, meaning we want everything. He says that, but we can't build a coal plant in America. And wouldn't most people agree that while right now no one wants to do it because of gas prices, in the future, if those gas prices go up, and if we're trying to compete in the global marketplace and have a strong economy ourselves, why should we be tying one arm behind our back? And so next week we are going to have a bill on the House floor sponsored by some Democrats and Republicans, and in the United States Senate by Democratic senators and some Republican senators as well, most Republican senators, a lot of Democratic senators, that would simply say, if in the future America wants to build a new coal-fired plant, they will be able to do so. So this is just a very practical approach. I don't think most people would say that's radical, but I wanted you to be aware of it because we hear so much on this issue, and it is an issue. But I can tell you there are a large number of scientists around the world who are acknowledging that the projections of these computer models are not equal to the reality out there in the marketplace. So thank you all very much, and I'm so glad to finish up just as Senator McConnell is coming in. Thank you.